Welcome back. As Nigeria moves gradually toward the 2027 general elections, the country's political and economic landscape is becoming increasingly tense. The newly amended Electoral Act has placed the Independent National Electoral Commission at the center of national debate, with opposition parties and civil society groups questioning provisions and also not forgetting the provisions around electronic transmission of results and compressed election timelines. INEC chairman, responding to the institution's preparedness, has noted that 100% perfection should not be expected by Nigerians. Let's take a look.
As much as possible to give this country the best election. However, we may not be able to achieve 100% perfect election for now. But as far as electronic transmission of results is concerned, I said it before FCT Area Council that we have the capacity to transmit the results, and that we're going to transmit it.
At the same time, economic debates around the 2026 budget and new tax laws were highly controversial until they were eventually signed into the law, amidst concerns about unrealistic revenue base and the large portion of budget being used to repay debt rather than fund development. The power sector has also remained a major concern among citizens, even as the Aso Rock presidential villa explores alternative power solutions amid shrinking electricity supply nationwide. Join us this morning to discuss the state of the nation is Professor of Strategy and Development, Policy Analyst and Political Economics, Professor Anthony Kila. A warm welcome to you and thanks for joining us on Breakfast Central this morning.
Good morning. Good to be here. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Now let's start off with the Electoral Act amendment and INEC controversy. The amended Electoral Act sparked some controversy, though signed into law at record speed. Opposition law has asked lawmakers to get it back into the room and begin the amendment over again. The modification of provisions on real-time electronic transmission of results was a major bone of contention. From your perspective, would it guarantee, is that the silver bullet to guarantee free and fair elections if that clause mandatory is included in the Electoral Act, the mandatory transmission, electronic transmission of results?
Well, it's a bit, normally people say it's neither here nor there. In this case, I think it's a bit here, it's a bit there. I do not believe there will be a silver bullet that will guarantee everything, but I believe it will go a long way. What people want are three things, credibility, certainty and transparency. They're three similar things, but they're not the same. And when you put them together, you get a strong institution. Credibility, certainty, and transparency. Transmission does that, just the same way you walk into to the store of an unknown stranger and you do your transfer immediately and they get the money. That's what people are imagining in their mind. INEC needs to work towards that. Let me say that it is legitimate for the opposition to oppose and to try to find a compromise and request that is amended. But, shame on all our governors and all our legislators and all those people who, for some reason, they appear so disconnected with the reality of Nigeria that anyone seen to be against anything digital at this age is conceived as an archaic, unproductive and unprogressive element, like an enemy of progress, because too many things we do in the world is digital. Even love is getting to become a digital affair at the moment. Hence the too many. So, for you to be against that, there's something wrong with you. You shouldn't say we're not ready. You shouldn't say some people will not be able to participate. What you should be saying is, let us find a way to make sure everybody can participate. So I would like to put that on record.
All right. Now, let's move to another angle and let's talk about timelines. Now, this law has reduced election preparation timelines, and there have been arguments. The critics have argued that this will favor the ruling party. Let's look at the practicality of it. How will a shorter notice period affect smaller parties and those who are just coming into the scene ahead of the 2027 elections?
Well, it'll affect them because, objectively they're new. They're just trying to get together. The major opposition party, if not the only opposition party, is the ADC. One has to say fully African Democratic Congress, so you don't confuse it with APC. I don't even know why they have to choose a name so similar. I predict people mixing up this name as we go ahead to election when we start juxtaposing them. The ADC is a new party, it's a coalition of factions of different parties. They're just getting themselves together, so they need time. So objectively, the ruling party, which is the most consolidated, although they're having their own troubles now, as I predicted a few months ago that they will have it when Congress comes. They're getting together now, but they are there, so it will favor them. This is a bit like you saying that a student who has attended class every day, who has been in that school from the beginning of the time, will have an advantage over the new students. Of course, they're going to have a new advantage. The point is it designed to game the opposition, to benefit the ruling party at the expense of the opposition? That is a true question. Opposition say yes. I do not see real proof, but clearly it benefits them because they're consolidated. My view is that the opposition should just roll up their sleeves, and walk against time. We're not the one who told them not to have a party before now. Now that they have a party, it is their duty to just, work very hard and make things happen. But there are two things I want to say about INEC in particular, regardless this timetable. I challenge the process that INEC has used to announce this timetable. And I think this is the problem we have. Even the opposition, the chairman, the secretary, all of them, shame on them. They don't get it. You see, the things they should be protesting should be that the process that was used. Instead of INEC turning itself to an announcer that say this is the date we're going to do the election, what INEC ought to be doing is to call all the parties into a room and work out the date together. They don't have to be like a consensus, but at least if they are informed and they have input in choosing that date, we will not have political parties against INEC. And to my colleague, the chairman INEC, I laugh when he says we might not get 100% result to our desire. I cannot, it would be intellectually dishonest of me if I do not point out at him that will he be getting 100% of his salary though? Let's move on.
Wow. It obvious. That was going to be my next question to you, but I think you took the word out of my mouth. I was going to ask what you make of your colleague, Professor Joash Amokpito's statement that he cannot guarantee 100% at the elections. But let me switch quickly.
Let us take a bit of the percentage he can guarantee from his pay.
Okay. Right. But let me ask, since you've answered that, I want to ask, 873 billion naira was requested by INEC, of course, led by its chairman. And the House is considering adding 30 billion naira to that amount, stating clearly that maybe there was an oversight. They've seen that more money is needed to, handle the administrative aspect of it, the running around for the election. What do you make of this sum? A huge sum, like times 3 of what we had used in 2023, over 900 billion, getting into 1 trillion naira for an election. And yet the INEC boss says, I can't guarantee 100%, fairness or smooth running, rather, of the election. What do you make of that?
3 things I'm going to say about that. Number one is that, generally speaking, Nigerian elections are the most expensive in the world. Specifically speaking, when you juxtapose the total amount spent to per capita income, to per capita, to earnings of individual in the country, and you realize that it is the most expensive in the whole world. You think what people earn and what we're spending on election. The problem is that the election has to hold, otherwise we'll not be in a democracy anymore. For the amount they want to spend, if I had my way, say I was a kind of Ayatollah, although it's a bit dangerous to be an Ayatollah now. If I was like a pope or a bishop or something, I would call all of them, if I had the authority, and beg them to say, please, let's not do election. Let this one stay there for 2 years, and another people stay there for another 2 years, and let us use that money for health, security, and education. And let's just leave it. Let's just beg them to say, look, you're all friends. Agree between yourselves. Save us this money. But, that cannot be done, unfortunately. But honestly, it seems like a joking, but that's my instinct when I see that money. I believe we should throw out a kind of competition to product managers, supply chain experts, intellectuals in the country, and say, can you design for us an electoral process that will give us 100% and cost less.
Okay, so
And let
can we design an election that will cost less? And that's, one of the arguments that we've seen against that. The fact that so far we've not really seen a budget implementation report regarding the election, one that one can argue and say that the monies disbursed have been rightfully allocated. And now we're getting a 30 billion naira extra request by the Senate Committee on Electoral Reforms.
And also, if I may chip in here, after spending all those billions, Nigerians also wonder the quality, because the aim of elections is to elect representatives. They say the quality of their representation is poor and it doesn't reflect in their lives. It doesn't change their lives. So maybe we need to start looking at the personnel, the pool of leaders where we select from, improving on that,
right,
and also the electoral process.
I think we need to relook everything. But there's one thing we must say. One thing, maybe it's political correctness, I don't know why. One thing we ought to be looking at that we're not looking at is the fact that part of the reasons why elections are so expensive in terms of money, in terms of time, and in terms of anxiety is because too many of the people contesting for elections are potential criminals. They have what you call in law animus delinquens. How can you, we talk about violence, we talk about vote buying, vote selling, vote stealing, as if it's one kind of accident. It is some individuals, men like you and I, and women, no, let's not leave out women. They tend to leave out women when it's a bad thing. Men and women like you and I who get together to design these kind of things. So somehow, my own idea of an chairman should be a man or woman who comes out thinking that I'm dealing with criminals. I'm dealing with people who can plan and perpetuate violence. I'm dealing with people who have no qualms to buy and sell votes.
And from your estimation, is Mr. Joash Amukuton, is he that man?
Oh, well, we shouldn't judge him until after he does. I haven't seen his mind. I see that he has changed his wardrobe, but I don't know if how that is going to affect his work. It's looking more like them. But, it doesn't have to be one man. It's an institutional thing that has to be said out there. That has to be. Obviously, if it was me, you will know I think that already. He hasn't said that in the past. I am saying it now so that they will not be tempted to choose me. They will know what I think about them.
I want to go back to talk about something that our guest had said. We had Festus Okoye join us on the show last week, and he had said that even the Electoral Act's pre-amendment, that as it is or as it was, it could have guaranteed or can still guarantee us decent elections. And it's not really about the laws or the renewal of same, but that it's more about the people, that the people are the ones who would ensure that we have free, fair, credible elections delivered to us. Do you agree with that?
Yes, but when you say people, let's be clear, it's politicians, not the citizens. Because these people talk, it's a kind of gaslighting. When we say we're all guilty, no, we're not all guilty. A few of us who are the politicians are the ones guilty. And yes, he's right. I agree with him, but except, just to qualify. Look, in another life, in another place, I've contested elections a few decades ago in England. And guess what? Oh, I didn't win, by the way. Guess what? It was just pencil and paper that they used, and nobody contested it. It was very clear. You saw yourself what happened. So yes, it is the people, but better still, it is the criminals among us that are costing us so much stress and so much money. And until we're able to look at them and say, this is the reality, I suspect we're not going to get out of it, because there is no process that cannot be manipulated. That is all the truth of the matter. The nearest is probably banking. Maybe we should, I don't want my colleagues to be annoyed with me, but maybe instead of professors, we should get bankers to manage these things for us. Because at least they secure money and fraud is rare among them. Maybe we should look at that process they're using. Or get newscasters to lead it so that it can be on time. I always tell people, have you noticed that news is never late? We need to look at sectors of the society.
Event planners, maybe.
Yes, we need, reliability from bankers, punctuality from newscasters. I think we need to just shop around and put the dream team together.
Okay. Looking at the dream team and who would put together, I'd like us to just move a little bit away from the elections. Let's look at the economy now. I don't know if you're aware of the recent budget defense that has been taking place in the Assembly. We've seen ministers who have come We've seen agencies, government parastatals, and yet they're not able to defend their budgets. The recent one was that of the Ministry of Finance, which of course has led to the appointment of the chairman of the fiscal, reforms, economic reforms. I'm talking about Mr. Tayo. Yes.
That's what I led. Okay.
if we look at that ministry, that's just one. That's just one. We have other ministries who appeared, even that of FAN, 3 days ago, they couldn't defend how much they've made, where they spent the monies on. And then you have ministers who have come to say, listen, for 2024, 2025, we only got 36 million out of 200 and something billion that was budgeted, especially for the healthcare sector. What do you make of this whole challenge or problems that the ministries and parastatals are facing right now? And how does that impact heavily on the budget and tax policy?
Well, what do I make of it is that we have a serious leadership deficit problem. We're not in a good place when it comes to leadership. Actually, we're in a very bad place. Because there's no private organization or society, well, maybe some societies, but generally, well-structured organizations, societies that have this kind of problem. You only find this kind of problem in government. And this tells you that instead of giving government and politics so much power, we need to be thinking of reducing it. Because quite frankly, they are inherently incapable, let alone incompetent. You see, let alone dishonest or corrupt. We like to talk about corruption in Nigeria, but I keep saying, let us talk about competence. These people are incompetent. Even in stealing, they're not competent even in their stealing. Even in, playing with budget, they're not even competent enough to do that. That's a big issue. So to that extent, there's a leadership problem. There is a wider problem for the society because if budgets are not implemented, and I want our viewers to think about this, regardless of who they vote for, who they intend to vote for, to vote for who have voted for. You look at it this way, the whole point of budget is that the promises of leaders and administrators or governors and presidents is said, but it's not done. For these things to happen, budgets need to be implemented. Contractors, suppliers, project people are stuck because these budgets are not implemented. We're not looking at the gravity and the consequence of things in details. If we did, we'll see how severe these things are. The problem also is that because we live more on favor and privileges than merit and fairness, people don't speak out. As a consultant, I know people who are affected by this unimplemented budget. But they cannot speak out because if they speak against it, I've advised them to do, they're afraid that there will be reprisal against them. They won't get future jobs. So you just take it on the chin and keep quiet. And that's a wrong system. So to your questions, I think the consequences are real, they're severe. They're economical, they're social, and they're emotional. And it's also reputational. You look at a country where that is not happening. Why would you as a foreign investor want to go and invest there? Why you want to partner with them? And it's also a political thing, a leadership issue. It smacks of a very huge leadership deficit, qualitative leadership deficit that I think we need to look at seriously.
Okay, still talking about the economy, let's talk about the quality of life of Nigerians. Earlier today when we started the show, we played a video of Reno Mokri in support of the City Boy movement, highlighting the many ways in which Nigeria is better today than it was 10 years ago. He spoke to the state of insecurity, stating that, in fact, we should probably get the video ready to play. He spoke to the state of insecurity and that the Niger Delta militants back in the day, they affected hugely our oil production. He spoke to Boko Haram taking over territories back in the day. He also spoke about fuel scarcity and that in this current administration, people are no longer sleeping in petrol, and talked about our GDP growth. If we have the video ready, if my producers have the video, we will play it, but I don't know if you've seen it. Let's get your reaction. Do you think that the quality of life of Nigerians today is better than it was?
I think the gentleman you mentioned, and I speak to different audiences, juxtaposing all is a bit embarrassing, but it's okay. My thinking is this: may we not have the kind of progress that needs explanation? If you're feeling good, it needs to be told. This kind of well-being that requires explanation is a bit of a sore well-being. Let me just give students of history a reminder, and those who have a memory to remind it. There was a governor in my state of Lagos, Governor Latif Jakonde, when he was governor. When things were better, you didn't need anybody to explain it to you. You walked across the road and you saw the roads were being repaired. You saw schools built in months. You saw housing. You saw people in your neighborhood becoming mini contractors, doing jobs. That is progress. It doesn't need explanation. It's right in front of your face. But, fair enough. Maybe we miss it. Maybe I talk to people like you and I miss those things. I don't know. But I'm sure Nigerians don't need to be reminded. They don't need to be informed of what has been good. If they're involved in it, if thanks to a policy you are benefiting, you will not be told before you praise it. But, it's all good. I guess it's all politics. Anybody can say anything when it comes to partisan politics.
Okay, Professor Anthony Kila, we can't discuss the state of the nation and speak to you for a few minutes. We haven't even touched on power, insecurity. We have so much more to unpack. But just hold on for a bit. Let's pay some bills and then we'll be back to continue this conversation. You're welcome back to Breakfast Central, and this is News Central. We are currently discussing the state of the nation with Professor Anthony Kila. We talked on electoral reforms and other issues. It's now time for us to move into other areas that we need to unpack. I'd like to kick off this next round with Nigeria's power crisis. The presidential villa is set to move off the national grid, and be fully independent of it, as they've invested a lot of billions in a solar project, while many Nigerians struggle with electricity shortages. Just today, we spoke about news of the Premier University College Hospital, UCH, in Ibadan, where doctors are performing procedures with phone touches. The corridors are not lit. It's simply in a mess. And if you look at where UCH used to be, premier institution, it was the crown jewel of Nigeria's medical institutions, to the sorry state it is today. And we also talk about industrialization. No nation can industrialize with no electricity, at the back with generators. And that means we haven't made much progress in the last few years. My question to you is, Professor Anthony Kila, is what does this say about the state of Nigeria's power sector and the government's desire to fix things? Are we making progress at all? Because if you look at the person of the power, the Minister of Power, Mr. Adelabu, he walks around with a power bank, and that does not really inspire confidence in a lot of Nigerians.
Well, I think just because he's Minister of Power, you don't want his phone to run down. But he tells you the reality of things. I mean, you see, that's part of leadership deficit I talk about. He could have had the decency to charge it at home before coming out. It's just little things. And you see, it's very strange. Amazingly, leadership is what affects a lot of things we do. But very few people who lead us have actually been trained to be leaders, at least in a very didactic way. If you had the right training, you would know that people like yourself would notice him walking about with power bank, and it will occur to him to charge that thing very well at home and in the car and never in public view. They're just subtle things you learn in the leadership strategy class about perception and power management, which apparently he has not done. The same thing goes for the president. Let me be very clear. The president and the presidency for this kind of error. Look, the opposition make a big deal out of the fact that the president is leaving the grid or the villa is leaving the grid. It is not as bad as it appears. What is bad is the way it was presented. Rather than saying leaving the grid, which looks like a retreat or a surrender, they should have presented it saying that as part of efforts to increase the power system, we are doing this alternative. The way to get power is not only on the grid. You have solar, you have nuclear, you have XYZ options. You count everything and say, we're doing this to help things. And better still, when you do something for yourself, you also say, as we're doing it, we're creating a facility where 1 million homes. I think because Nigeria is 200 million, we should be talking in millions. I heard some people saying that they've empowered 5,000 people. And I say, thank you very much, good night. I could do that myself without government. So what they should be talking about is in millions, to say, as the villa is doing it, we're also putting in place facility to empower 1 million homes so that they can do that, so that we can relieve the burden and we can explore various options, cleaner energy. They could have, quote unquote, sold it better, which they did not do. And to the issue of the, University College Ibadan, it's very painful. You rightly call it a prime jewel. By the end of this transmission, I think maybe in a day or two, I'm going to be writing to New Central to see if we can do a joint effort to raise money for that hospital, because it is something worth preserving. I think whilst we criticize government, I also believe that those who have a face and a voice and some influence have a duty of intervention, to solve problem and to show those who ought to be doing it how things need to be done.
Okay, we're still speaking about power. I'm glad that my colleague raised that up. Part of the criticism about the struggle with Nigeria's power sector is the fact that we've put somebody who has a political ambition in the place of Minister of Power. There have been indications that he's vying for the governorship seat in Oyo State. And we already hear news from the grapevine that there are those who are already jostling to replace him as the minister. And, they are suggesting that President appoints a technocrat to fill that position. Do you think that that's also something to consider? And if this be true and he has to step down, what kind of person do you think will need to fill that seat? Because it feels like
He's distracted.
Yes, he's distracted, one. Two, cycle in, cycle out. We still have those challenges with power. The president did say that if he's not able to provide us electricity, we shouldn't vote him. But it does not seem like there's been any government that has been able to successfully solve Nigeria's electricity crisis.
Well, when the president said that thing a couple of years ago, I said hi in Yoruba, not just a general AH. It was a very Yoruba For him to have said that, I knew he was calling on trouble. But let us assume that he still has 2 years to get the light done, after which we'll draw the line, and that's it. But for the minister, I criticize this people harshly, but actually it's my friend. This idea of planning who will replace him before he's gone. I know New Central like to be proactive and looking ahead, but should we not allow him to go before we start thinking of allows? I think say he's going before we start.
I'm actually, it's not even just New Central. There's an article on the Punch newspaper that was released yesterday, and it says, Oyo 2027, jostle for Adelabu's ministerial seat heats up. So it's not just us. There's already news about it.
And there's also another reason.
You have co-conspirators.
No.
You have co-conspirators.
It's not a conspiracy.
The minister himself, Mr. Adelabu, released WhatsApp interactions of him and a prophet in Oyo State that wanted to pray for his gubernatorial ambitions. The prophet said he required to buy, he needed 1,000 trumpets to help, to help with the prayer effort. So this was the minister putting this out.
I'll have charged him 1,000 books instead of trumpets, which will cost him less than that. Why did he? I don't know why these people don't come to me for prayers. Now, I think that if we stop taking away politicians, there'll be nobody left, because politicians only know politicians. They don't know a lot of technocrats, and the ones they know they don't respect. We have to manage what we have. But I believe that, as he forced me to do so, my ideal minister for power will be somebody who understands that we need to diversify our supply in power, and we need to diversify our demand for power. The supply side requires that we fully explore various sources of energy to ensure we have power. That, for example, the most popular alternative is solar, because that's the handiwork. And the best way to do it is to increase the supply so that demand can be lower, and you inject a lot of finance into it, especially credit facilities, consumer credit for power generation, so that you remove a lot of people off the grid, and you remove a lot of people of using power. At the moment, there are gadgets. I know this because I'm involved in a solar energy company, Leeds. Well, I shouldn't, that looks like advert, but it's just a fact, you know. And I've seen a lot of gadgets that they do that does not require electricity anymore. So if we increase those kind of gadgets and products, it will reduce our demand. Then on the other side, will increase our supply. So we need a new Minister for Power that comes with a team that understands the needs for diversification, and above all, that sees how essential energy is. The other thing the ideal minister should be doing is also to have a program for prioritizing area, like the UCL, like industrial place, or, you know, like hospitals generally. Allow me to add universities and schools as well, since we're there. That's just, you know, for my own constituency. But generally speaking, you should identify 6 priority areas where you deliberately ensure that they have constant power supply while you help the rest of the nation. So I think that has proven me not to evade your question.
Okay.
But I expect your vision for that.
Okay. Let's go back to the political climate, especially looking at what's going on right now. Too many political parties. Some have been registered, newly registered, like we mentioned earlier, and during the first time we started asking questions. Right now, as we speak, the ADC seems to be one of the strongest oppositions, just one of them. The PDP, of course, I bet you know, maybe you could say they're in shambles or they're struggling, whichever word that you could use to quantify what's going on with them. But several opposition parties claim that the current political environment is becoming increasingly restrictive, especially ahead of 2027. So based on what we're seeing, there's electoral reforms, political defections, legal battles. Do you think we're entering a phase that would make our democracy to become a one-party state? Or do you think that the oppositions do have enough strength and power behind them to be able to contest effectively?
Well, again, it's a bit here and a bit there. There are no many opposition. The major opposition is ADC. You know, the PDP looks like children of a family that was once rich, and now the rich parent is dead, and they were not well trained to fend for themselves. They look like those children who are just in total disarray, and so you have to leave them. You can't expect them to take on the responsibility. They're gone. You know, Labour looks like, you know, like those actors who, well, they do one film and they can't repeat it. They're just gone. They're one-time hit thing. I wouldn't going to say one chance. I think that's the expression we use in Lagos. There's nothing substance. ADC is the real thing. So the problem ADC has is trying to get itself together. I think not quick enough, but they have the potential, because very soon the country will have to choose, and those who do not want APC will have to go there. So that's the thing they have. The risk of a one-party state is a bit here and a bit there, because it's a question of character. I think that people who are leaving their parties to join the government, they do not earn a lot of respect from me. I think they're deficient in character in terms of their ability to stand strong as opposition, or the ability to have been able to look ahead. You can't say you are vehemently against Tinubu 2 years ago, and all of a sudden you all of a sudden love them. What I hasn't done anything particular to make, you know, mind-blowing things that you did not know about him. Whether you like or look Tinubu, there's nothing he has done in government that you cannot trace back to his tradition and his political view. The only thing perhaps is that things that he hasn't done yet that people are saying he ought to have done. But opposition, I think, mischievously and lazily cry that the government is trying to create a one-party state. I say to them, you have a burden of leadership to attract new people and to hold the one you have so that they do not, you know, run away from you. But I do think there's a challenge, and I want to look at the president's question on this one. There is a challenge, also a burden of leadership on part of the president, the leadership of the APC, to ensure that the institute of opposition remains, because a democracy without opposition is not a strong democracy. And a victory against a non-existent opposition is not a good victory. Over 30% of the Nigerian governors, elected governors, over 30%, sorry, not 30, over 30, that's over 80%. Over 30 have either directly, openly, or indirectly lend their alliance to the party and the president himself. You see, I want to be very clear. I think it's legitimate for people to change party, although in terms of, legal legitimacy they have, I challenge the moral and character issue behind it. But let's be clear, it would be naive, perhaps even politically, intellectually dishonest, not to suspect that all of a sudden 80% are going to one way. The suspicion stems from the anxiety that these people might be doing so out of convenience, opportunism, or because they're being coerced to do so. It might not be true, but it is legitimate, it is logical to suspect that. And I think the president knows that people who support you out of fear or convenience cannot be good statements. In all this, they're living out the Commonwealth. And those of us who are interested in Commonwealth would like to invite the president to know that history will not judge you based on the number of governors that supported you, but based on how you left the institution you met. Let us assume that this president is perfect, is noble, and all the things he's doing is fantastic and is the best in the world. That still does not justify 80% of the support. But because he's not the best person in the world, because there are objections to him, it makes his support suspicious. At least as president, he has not cured malaria, he has not cured obesity, corruption, or bald head for people. So, he's not a miracle worker that you say, oh, wow, even Jesus did not get 80% support, or Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him. So, this thing is suspicious. I think that the president and the government in general should make it their duty to ensure there's a vibrant opposition, because it will legitimate their victory if they eventually win. And before then, for the benefit of all of us, it will sharpen their view. Options, policies, and decisions for it to work well need to be confronted with alternatives. That is why the Institute of Opposition was established. And anybody who destroys it destroys the fabric of democracy.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Kila, for speaking with us this morning. Very interesting as we've looked into different aspects of Nigeria's economy, security, better still, wrapped up in the word state of the nation. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Professor Kila.
Thank you.